Welcome to the Outsourcing Blueprint, where scaling your business gets smarter, not harder. Hosted by Scott Smith, an outsourcing expert with over 20 years of global experience. From India to Alaska to South Africa, Scott's passion for people drives his mission to help you build powerhouse teams created for success. Grab your coffee, your boldest dreams, and your blueprint. It's time to build the business you've always wanted. Let's go.
Everybody, welcome to the Outsourcing Blueprint. I'm your host, Scott Smith, and I am so excited about our guest today. This person is the visionary founder of Crevay company, right?
Correct.
Cheri Smith. I'm so happy you're here, Cheri. Thank you for being with us on the Outsourcing Blueprint. I have loved the time that I've been able to spend getting to know you and getting to work with you a little bit. And I'm really excited to talk to you today.
I am excited to be here. And I wanted to know the Smith, same last name, that is a coincidence, but I have gotten to I've enjoyed getting to know you, Scott, and feel like we have a connection somehow.
Well, as you know, I'm convinced we're related. So
yeah, I know.
Right?
Digging back in that genealogy.
Right? Absolutely. Somewhere back there. So, all right, Cheri. So I have a question that I like to start this podcast with, and I'm not always consistent with it, but I'm going to ask you today. Cheri, what is your boldest dream?
Ooh, that one's easy for me. Sailing the Southern Ocean on a 70-foot racing sailboat.
Really?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I want to hear more about that.
So I actually was signed up to do it. There is an organization that does a round the world race. It's in Britain, and I'm blanking on the name right now, but they will take people and train them to sail. They have big sailboats, and you can sign up to do a leg of a race. I have done ocean sailing before.
Okay.
I have done ocean racing before. I love it. It is fantastic. And I want to do it again. And the Southern Ocean is kind of like the really challenging sailing leg. And so that seems the safest way to do it. I wouldn't want to sail the Southern Ocean myself on my sailboat, but with a trained group on a big sailing yacht, that would be fantastic.
I mean, that sounds magical. So
it is.
I have all these things, these visions in my head, right, of what that looks like. So when you say Southern Ocean, let's just specify. Do you mean like the South Atlantic, the South Pacific? Do you mean
the ocean that encircles Antarctica?
Okay.
And so the legs specifically, and I actually was signed up to do the race from the end of this year into 2026. And I actually started my business instead. I would have had to spend quite a bit of 4 weeks training in 2024 and 25. So I dropped out of that, but would love to go back and do it. But the leg that I was hoping that I was scheduled to do is from Cape Town to Australia.
Okay. Wow. So when I asked you this question, this was not the answer that I expected.
It surprises a lot of people.
I love it. I just freaking love it. So when you're ready to do that and you're going to, land yourself in Cape Town, let me know. As you know, I'm connected.
Yeah, now I know that you have been there.
Absolutely.
Spent some time.
Yeah. I lived there for several months, in fact, and it was a beautiful, amazing place. One of the most beautiful cities that I've ever been to, and just an incredible experience. But that's amazing. And so I said I have all of these visions in my head of what that looks like. And the reason I have that is, my brother, way back in the day, this is my older brother. So, long time ago, he received an appointment to the Naval Academy and started his academic journey actually in Annapolis. And so I remember all of the brochures about Annapolis and all the things that we read. And I was a little kid. I was like, 8 or 9 or something. And, but I remember looking at this one, and it was this sailboat out in the ocean, leaning off to the side, and everybody's hanging on, and the sail is full of wind. And I was just like, wow. So when you say that, that's exactly what pops into my head. And I have a core childhood feeling around that vision. I love it.
It's an accurate picture that you have in your head, and it is magical. There's just something about being on the water. And, when you talk about the Naval Academy, one of the things that I love about sailing is the teamwork. Actually, two things. And what it does for your concept of leadership and understanding what that really is and helping to foster it. And the Naval Academy has some really great leadership training programs. And there's actually one where they take the midshipmen and in the summer, and they'll take people who didn't grow up near water, hadn't seen the ocean before they went to the academy. And in a week, will teach them to sail, and to the point where the crew of midshipmen themselves can take a ship and take a boat up the coast from Annapolis to Newport. And that's how they cap off. They do a week of training, and then they take a week to sail up to Newport, and then back. And it's just an amazing program. And they learn terrific teamwork and leadership skills.
I just think that's amazing. I'm so glad to know that about you. Thank you for having that be your boldest dream. I just love it. So, well, so let's take that and let's spin it a little bit, right? So you have big, bold dreams and things that you want to accomplish, but I assume you also have big, bold dreams around your company. So talk to me. My understanding is that that Crevay is really about helping small businesses master big projects, right?
Yes. Yep.
So talk to me about what inspired you to start Crevay and how you got that going and what challenges you're trying to resolve.
So it started as just, I didn't fit anywhere. I had left a job, taken a little bit of a break. And when I went back and looked, I've worked in project management. It's been my driving force. I love it, going back decades. And so I've worked as a project manager. I left a position, and when I just was ready to go back, I couldn't find anything that fit. And so I thought, well, I'll work for myself. And so it started as just manage projects for people. But over time, I realized I was fundamentally unhappy with some aspects of how just the overall approach to projects and thinking about projects and how they're used and how effective they are. And what it comes down to, the mission of Crevay is to make project management useful for everyone. And it's a big mission, because projects, if you have a start and an end point for something and a goal, that is a project. And so they're ubiquitous, and they should be easier for people. They shouldn't be so weighty to manage. And so that's one thing that's driving that, wanting to make it easier and ubiquitous and more lightweight is one of the things that drove me to adopt my current approach and emphasis in Crevay. And in the course of kind of building out some of these ideas, I noticed there was a gap where, if you're a small organization, you're just a few people, you can coordinate very closely with each other. And you can get by without a lot of extra techniques and structure. If you're a big organization, I mean, it's very common now to have a project management office or some sort of structured approach to projects and making sure that they're delivering value in larger organizations. But small and medium-sized businesses, say you have a few dozen to maybe 100 or 200 people, often don't have a way of making sure that they're getting the results that they need from the investment that they're making, especially in big projects, that the ones that are meant to grow the business, or the ones that are meant to release a new project or product, or the ones that are meant to significantly improve operations. So these are big enterprise-wide projects, but delivering on those is tough for small to medium-sized businesses. And I didn't see a lot targeted at them. So that's one of the drivers, is filling that gap, making it manageable and lightweight, and making it useful for people without a lot of degrees and certifications. That's really what we're trying to do.
I think that's fascinating. Why do you think, I mean, businesses of every size struggle with project management, project completion. I had an experience in my last corporate job where, I mean, everything was a project, right? And everything was an official project. But they would throw people in and just say, all right, get this done, right?
Yeah.
And nobody really knew how to do it. And even the people that maybe had their project management certification, right? The PMP, I think that is, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I always have a joke about that, but I will not make it here on the Outsourcing Blueprint.
That's a common one.
Well, still. But why do so many organizations, whatever size, struggle with their projects and with proper project management?
I think some of it is rooted in the origins of the practice.
Okay.
If you go back, project management, I think of it as a fairly young discipline. The term project management wasn't even really used until the 1950s, I think. And some of the techniques and things that we think about, Gantt charts and PERT technique, and some of these commonly or things you learn about when you're getting your PMP, those are rooted back in projects in the 20s and 30s and 40s, like building ships, these big projects that had a very engineering technical focus. And so a lot of the techniques started as very technical ways of dealing with these highly technical projects. Even Agile has its roots in software development. And so I think that has that focus on what are the techniques for scheduling and how are we going to manage risk, really drove the evolution of the discipline for many decades. And now you're seeing a decided shift towards value. In the last, 6 months, 2 major organizations have redefined what it means to be successful with a project from, we're used to the triple constraint, time, budget, scope. And I might even have this wrong. If I do, I'm embarrassed. But I don't care anymore.
Listen, don't be
That's not what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
It shift from that to what's the value you're delivering, and recognizing the value is subjective. It depends on what your stakeholders are, what's valuable to them. They're the ones who define it in part. So you're seeing the discipline of project management shift over time. And I think it's a useful direction. And, I'm trying to be part of that by giving people useful tools to, okay, let's get out of the weeds. Let's get out of all of the techniques and really focus on just common sense stuff. How do we define the goal? How do we keep our eye on the goal? How do we respond to change when things shift? And that's what's really important about project management, and less emphasis on, how I'm going to track resources and schedules, which is important, but it's not everything.
Interesting. So you said something just now that it kind of hit, I guess, a pain point for me from my past. Change. How do we then, I mean, any project the point of it is to lead to change of some sort, right? Otherwise, what's the point of having the project? So whether you're trying to execute something that's going to deliver, improved revenue, right, for the organization, or you're trying to maximize productivity, which ultimately is to improve revenue, right? So everything is focused around that. But whatever, you have people that are immediately affected by projects, by changes that happen. So how do you get everybody on the same page? How do you make sure that all of the stakeholders and all of the impacted parties are focused on whatever it is the end result is? And if the end result is value of some sort, awesome. If the end result is, I remember, and I am not a project management specialist. That's not me, right? Not that I can't do a project, but I don't have near the experience that you have that is very specifically project focused. Management, absolutely. Project management, that's a little bit of a different, personnel management and project management are two different things, two sides of the same coin, one would argue, right?
Yeah.
But two different things. So, but I remember when we put something in place once for a production flow, and it was, I forget what they called it. It was batch processing. We were processing things in small batches to try to piece them through. And that was supposed to be faster and more efficient than, doing the larger chunks of things that we were working through to get bigger pieces done at the same time. Am I making any sense?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Sense. So it was difficult to get all of us to align with the changes. And I remember I was one of the managers at the time. And so I had to buy into the change, and I had to work with the person that was the project manager to get all of the changes accomplished. Now, it wasn't just me, but I was one of the people that had to jump in and help support all of the change. And I didn't see how it was going to work. I didn't see how it was going to really improve things. The numbers, once we got everything implemented and people were used to how things flowed, the numbers bore out that we were moving a little more quickly. It was more efficient for us to work in that smaller batch piece flow. I don't even know if I'm using the right words, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you get people like me on board with stuff like that? How do you align people with those changes? Because they're big.
So there's there's actual change management, kind of a science. How do you get people to accept change? And that's even evolving. People are we're understanding our brains better all the time. And so there's a lot of exciting developments in that area. And so there's that aspect of how do you work with people? How do you influence them? How do you understand how to get them to adopt change? But at a more fundamental level, for me, it's about defining the team differently. So, in a lot of traditional or even newer, like agile techniques where you're trying to get something done, they have this team. And the team is the people who are on a day-to-day basis working towards this goal.
Sure.
And then you have, like, if you look at, I don't know how many kickoff decks in my lifetime I've either put together or seen, where, it's got little groups of people, and you might have, the project team here, and then you've got a project sponsor or someone who's funding it and has the business visionary. So there's different terms and different ways that people need to be involved. You might have, a group that provides oversight, and it's your steering committee. And then you might have an executive that is your executive sponsor. So they show these different groups, and then the difficulty becomes in how are you getting these different groups to communicate and link and stay on the same page. In reality, projects are systems, and anybody who has something to do or is impacted by or is invested in the outcome of a project, they're part of the team. And if you look at it that way, then it's okay, everybody needs to know what their role is, and I need to know how I'm going to be involved and what's expected of me. But I'm part of the team, and so I have to understand the goal. I have to have a little bit of input. I can't just be receiving things. People have to feel a little bit of control somewhere.
Right.
And I need to feel like my contribution is valued and just my existence is valued. And you do that by, as if you're on the planning and funding and directing side, you have to show some respect and understanding for the change that people will experience and how difficult that is. And some ability, or giving them some ability to affect their destiny. People, I think we underestimate people's ability to say, you know what, I understand there's these trade-offs. This is tough. I'm going to have to give up this, but the team's going to get this in return. And I'm a team player. I think we underestimate our ability to do that as humans. And so we don't give people the chance to understand, to have some input, to say, this is what's happening to me, and I'm not going to like it. I'm willing to do it, but it's not fun. Just things like that. I think really having the conversation and understanding the impact and showing some acknowledgement of the value that other people have and that their work brings to the table is, at the end of the day, gets you to that successful change.
So you mentioned, you have an executive sponsor, right? And then you have the people that are affected, at the lower level, maybe the ones that are actually doing the process or that are in the middle of whatever the process is that's changing. How do you align those people? How do you align that executive sponsor with the line worker that is actually going to be doing the work? How do you make sure that they come together? Because so often the executive vision, and this has been my experience, so often the executive vision isn't adequately shared or communicated. And it's difficult. It's not difficult for the line worker to see what's happening because it's happening right in front of them, right? They're being directly affected every single day. But it's sometimes more difficult from the executive standpoint. And I'm not throwing rocks at those executives because they have business decisions to make based on the success of the project or based on the work that line worker is doing. So how do you get them on the same page?
You work on the whole project system and you acknowledge the project system. So
today's episode of the Outsourcing Blueprint is brought to you by Leadcast Studio. Learn how to turn your podcast into a lead generation powerhouse. Visit us on the web at leadcast.studio. Leadcast Studio, turning conversations into clients.
You work on the whole project system and you acknowledge the project system. So, back to everybody's on the team. Traditional techniques a lot of times make a distinction between, different levels. You've got your project level, and then you might have a program level. But there's more to project execution than just doing the work. And when we use our playbook, we have a playbook to connect vision and delivery that is the centerpiece of how we work with organizations to walk them through developing a project system that works for them. And there's a graphic that we use in it that actually shows, okay, the project delivery, the people working on programming or building something, and the project manager that's overseeing that on a day-to-day basis. That's just one small part of a project system. And there's all these other things that happen around it. There's deciding what you're going to do and what the benefit that you should get from that project is, and prioritizing among all of the different things that you can do. So that's one piece. And there's another piece that's, making sure that you're actually delivering benefits and monitoring that and tracking it and adjusting as you go along. There's the managing change that we talk about. So there's all these things that happen around that, and they're not really separate from delivery. They're an integral part of delivery. And so everyone needs to understand, and everybody's involved. It's not like the executives and the project sponsors are the only ones who are defining benefits. Everybody's involved to some extent in that. So you have a large team that's more inclusive and expansive in its definition of who's part of the team. And then you're looking at the project system. And when people are looking at it that way, that's a fundamental mind shift for a lot of people. When you talk about project management, people are thinking Gantt charts and risk matrices and RACI matrices. And so that's a piece of it, yes. But all of the things that have to happen for a project to deliver value, that also falls within project management. And so understanding your piece of that and understanding what you're going to be held accountable for and the impact of your actions on other people. When people understand that, then things naturally flow better. So that's really, you asked about how do you get everybody lined up on the same page?
Right.
It's understanding the system, knowing your piece of the system, and then making sure that the lines, like everybody's having those ongoing conversations and keeping their eye on that goal.
You know what? I love that. And I'm glad you brought up the playbook. That was going to be my next question as we segue, in connecting those players, involved in the project. I remember a project, I was managing a team here in Phoenix several years ago, and the project that we had in front of us was we had to fix our schedules. Okay. Now, you wouldn't think, oh, this is going to be a big giant change, a big giant shift, but getting everybody, to buy into the idea that their work schedule was going to change was huge, right? Huge.
That's a big deal.
I knew it was going to be a big deal. I knew it was going to be huge. And I didn't want to wade in and say, here's what we're going to do. So what I ended up doing was I went to my leadership team, the people that reported to me, and I said, we need to change the schedules. We're having coverage gaps. We can't have coverage gaps, and we can't rely on the same people to step up with overtime to fill those coverage gaps every single time. We need to have it built into the system so that we don't have those coverage gaps, so that we can provide the service to our clients that we need to provide every single time, ideally without having to cover it with overtime, at least as a regular thing, right? We can always cover with overtime if we need to, but if it shouldn't be part of our plan. Here's our schedule. Well, we have these gaps, we'll fill it with overtime. That's not a great way to set it up, right? So for any of you out there, any of you 37,000 people that are listening to this right now, don't do that. So I went to my leads and I said, this is the problem that we have to solve. What do you want to do? And they taught me a very important lesson. They said, well, why don't we get the team involved in solving this problem?
Yeah.
And I said, help me understand what you think that looks like. They said, well, we'll take people from every shift and we will get them into a meeting, and which is what they did. They got them into a meeting that took about 3 days for them to map everything out and decide, okay, make their problem statement, and this is what we're going to solve, and these are the ideas they brainstormed. And I think I gave them 1,000 sticky notes, and they had sticky notes all over different boards, and they just worked through different possible solutions. And by the time they were done, they didn't bring me in because I was the boss. And if I come in and say, here's what we need, that will completely skew the result, right?
Right.
So they brought me in and said, here's what we have done. And they had lined out schedules that gave us coverage, and they had pulled the team, and everybody was on board, and everybody knew that, they were going to get either their first or second schedule option as what their schedule was going to be. And everybody was okay with it. If not 100%, they were 80% okay with it because everybody understood, because it was their solution. It wasn't mine.
Yep.
And I was so proud of my leadership team, one, for thinking outside of our particular box, because you know how it goes in corporate America. Sometimes you get boxed in and you don't mean to, you don't start that way, but there's a box. And if you're out there in corporate America and you don't think you're in a box, might want to look a little further in all directions, because you've got big box walls around you and you don't know it, because every organization has its boxes, right? And they put people into those boxes, and this is where you go, this is where you fit. And you have to get picked up and moved into another box if you want to have an option to see a different box, but it's still a different box.
Yeah.
Now I'm talking about boxes. Cheri, why are you letting me talk about boxes? So, all right. So because we are the Outsourcing Blueprint, I have to ask an outsourcing question. And I want you to just think for a moment about the role of outsourcing in projects, whether it's projects. The question that I had here is project execution, right? And having the right resources to be able to manage large projects. But it doesn't have to be that. It could be project management, could be project ideation, it could be project execution. What do you see as the role that outsourcing can play in helping organizations with their projects?
There's two things that come to mind. One is doing the important work that gets the project done, and utilizing what people do best wherever they are. And the other thing is, using outsourcing forces you to think outside those boxes. So you may think in terms of roles in your company. We have this person who does this, and we have this person who does this, and their role is this. But if you're going to outsource something, you have to be thinking a little more granularly about, okay, I have a person who does scheduling. Well, what actually is involved with scheduling, and can we break some of those pieces apart, still coordinate, but give a piece of that to someone else and keep this piece with us because we have to do that. So it forces you to think about the components of roles, not just the role itself, and to be more flexible in how you get those, how you do that particular action or piece of work. And we've actually done 2 events on how to hire a project manager. And, there's certain traditional ways of hiring and sourcing for a project manager, but there's actually a lot of different ways of getting project management help. And if you think about the role and what's happening in a more flexible way, then you can better find the people who do that particular thing best and make sure that you're being as effective as possible. So it forces you to think differently about how you're resourcing. And that flexibility is an advantage. I think companies who can find flexible ways of meeting their needs instead of like, I have to hire all the time, that's a competitive advantage.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. And just as a reminder for everybody out there, if you were to hire Crevay to help you come in and manage a project or set up your project or teach you how you can be more successful in in creating and managing and connecting the vision around projects, you're outsourcing that to Cheri and to Crevay. So
Yeah.
when you come to me and you're looking for whether it's a virtual assistant or it's, a team, and maybe you want to set up a sales team or you need to set up anything, you're outsourcing that expectation to me. Now, I, as an outsourcing consultant, may outsource that to a company that is in the Philippines or in India or in Zimbabwe or in Nicaragua or in and any of you of my partners out there in those places, I'm talking about you. Jose, I'm talking about you, buddy. So I we do that, but it doesn't have to be that, right? Anytime you hire, and the big example I always use with people is, we outsource our food all the time, right? Whether it's a fast food run or it's we go to a nice restaurant, we're outsourcing that dinner, and we're paying somebody else to provide that service for us instead of making it ourselves. So that's what I just remind everybody, that outsourcing is not the big evil word, although it's, been bandied about as a big evil word. For me, I don't wear it proudly on my logo yet, but I'm working on that. But it's necessary. It's a part of our world today. None of us live in those boxes that we talked about. We have to be able to see outside them. And especially if you're an entrepreneur or a business owner, you have to be able to see outside the box that you're in. Or if you're a manager or a director, a COO or an operations director, an operations manager, you need to find and hire somebody like Cheri and like Crevay to come in and help you with your projects. Because one, you're an expert. Two, nobody's going to give them better service. Nobody's better organized and prepared. Nobody has the same playbooks that you have that you will set people up with to allow them to drive success in their project execution and their
Yeah,
project setup.
that's
So
that's very true. And that's one of the great things about outsourcing, beyond just everybody's doing what they're really good at, is the opportunity to meet so many different people. And
right.
it, I mean, it is so fun. That is the best part of my job right now, is just understanding and getting to know different people, understanding what their challenges are and what they bring to the table, and seeing the value that other people have to offer. Yeah, and I talk about value a lot, but it's an important part of my concept. That the name Crevay actually is kind of a portmanteau of value co-creation, and that idea that as a service provider, I don't bring all the value, and you as a customer don't bring all the value. It's the interaction of what we do together that creates value. And I just love that concept.
I love that concept.
Isn't
That's
that great?
something, yeah, Cheri, lead with that, sister. Lead with that. It is such a great thing. And you talk about value, but you talk about value because that's what people need, right? So
Yes.
yesterday, and then I'll say this last thing and then we'll wrap up, but because we've talked for far longer than I intended us to be on this call together today. I'm just enjoying it so much. I love talking to you, but I put a video out on LinkedIn yesterday that was very raw and it was just very direct. And, usually I like to have some fun, or I like to put some music, or and I tried to record this thing, I don't know, 20, 30, 75. I think I said 75 times in the video because it felt like it was 75 times. And I was over there standing in front of my ring light, with my fake Pollock painting behind me, right? Um, which I love, just by the way. That's a whole other thing.
I love that painting too. So the more
I,
you use it,
I
I'm going to
don't know
watch
why
those
it
videos.
speaks to me so much, Sherry, but the complete disorganizational organization, and I love it. Anyway, so but it occurred to me that, we have a lot of people out there that live in scarcity and in fear. And we have business owners, entrepreneurs, people that have gone out on their own, that are making decisions about what they need to do with their business based on just the little information that they have, because that's what we all do when we get started. We're making the best decisions we have with the little bit of information that we have, and then we build out from there. And everybody starts that way. And some
Mhm.
people have more to start, and some people have less to start. But we all start in roughly the same place, in roughly the same way. And it just occurred to me that there's so much fear and scarcity out there. And, people, when they get into starting a project or they decide they're going to outsource, they just decide they're going to do it on their own. And it doesn't have to be that way, right? They can make decisions uh, like they want people to make decisions about them. When you are looking for somebody to hire you,
Mhm.
are you looking for them to make that? I'm going to make this is going to sound terrible, but I'm going to make the low cost decision because it's the cheapest. Therefore, this is the decision that I'm going to make. Even if it's not the best, nobody has wanted anyone to make that decision about them in their corporate career. You know what? I think I need to go with the cheap option instead
Yeah.
of to go with the Scott or the Sherry option, right? Or in their
But
business.
it's understandable
It
that
is,
people do
but
that
it's
because
it's
it's
about
easiest to
value.
evaluate.
It's about value. And
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
and it just, and not to talk over you there, but it really is about value, the value that you bring, that Crevay brings, the value that I bring, that Akata Consulting brings. It's about recognizing the value that you're bringing. And you talked about value, and that rung that bell with me because that's really what hit me yesterday. It's not about cheap. It doesn't matter if it's a low cost. That's fine. It doesn't have to be expensive, but it's all about value.
It is.
Make the decision based on the value. All right, I'm done. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, and it's hard. That is hard to do, right? Because value is a much, cost is something that's easy to measure,
Yeah.
but value is harder to understand, thinking about what's valuable to me, and it
Right.
shifts over time. And so we're not comfortable as human beings with ambiguity and uncertainty. And so we tend to shy away from that,
Right.
even when it's not to our advantage.
Yeah, I agree. I so agree. And it's funny, when I made that video, that's the where I was coming from. And I know I said it all wrong, but the point is that we should make decisions based on the value that we're going to receive. We should, when we're building out our companies, when we're putting together our projects, we need to think about the value that we're going to bring and
Mm-hmm.
how we can lead with that value. And if people can get a clear understanding of the value that they will receive, their
Mm-hmm.
buying decision, their hiring decision is going to be a lot simpler, you
Yep.
know. And even if the cost is a little more or a little less, that's not nearly as relevant. It's not irrelevant, but it's not nearly as relevant as the perceived value, that return on their investment that they're going to get from whatever it is that they're buying into, whether that is, working with you or working with me, or, going to their favorite restaurant and getting whatever meal that they're going to choose because it's really the value in the experience that they're looking for. Right.
Yep.
All right. I'm getting down off my value soapbox. And
I'm there with you.
thanks, Sherry. So tell everybody where they can find you and find more information about you.
So the website is Crevayco, Crev, it's in Victor, AYCO.com. Um, if you go to my LinkedIn profile, which is PM-for-everyone.
We're going to drop a link in the show notes for everybody.
Let's see my detail orientation here. And so if you go to my LinkedIn profile, you can download the playbook. I have a link there to download the playbook. Download it. I'll follow up with you. I love to talk with people about what drove them to download the playbook and what they would hope to get from their project efforts. So after you get the playbook, there's a link in there to sign up for chat. Let's talk.
I love it. Cheri, thank you very much for being here today. It is always a pleasure to spend time with you, and I love your insights, and thank you for everything that you've brought our listeners today.
I really appreciate the opportunity. I enjoy speaking with you, Scott, and I learned so much. So I look forward to the next time.
Next time, indeed. Thanks, Cheri. All right, everybody, this has been another episode of the Outsourcing Blueprint. I'm your host, Scott Smith. Catch you next time. Let's go. Thanks for tuning in to the Outsourcing Blueprint. I'm your host, Scott Smith. If today's episode brought you value, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who's ready to take their business to the next level. Follow me on LinkedIn or on YouTube at Akata Consulting for more tips, insights, and updates. Or join our free school community, the Outsourcing Blueprint. Until next time, keep dreaming bold, building big, and outsourcing smarter. Let's go. Today's episode of the Outsourcing Blueprint is brought to you by Leadcast Studio. Learn how to turn your podcast into a lead generation powerhouse. Visit us on the web at leadcast.studio. Leadcast Studio, turning conversations into clients.